Wow, the Brooklyn Nets and everything that has gone on in this season to date find a way to give the Nets a fan base that has desperately needed a win. Exactly that. We're going to break down the 109-107 victory on the road against the Portland Trailblazers that included big moments from Kevin Durant, but also Ben Simmons, Yuta Watanabe, and no one more clutch than Royce O'Neal. Stand up, Brooklyn Nets. This is a day to be happy to be a Brooklyn Nets fan. We break it all down next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day, where, of course, we thank you for making us your first listen free on all those great platforms. I am Adam Armbrecht. He is Doug Norrie. The introductions are out of order, and it doesn't matter. Why? Because we'll let you know, just as a last little tidbit, that this episode is going to be brought to you by our friends over at Bet Online. That is, of course, because Bet Online has you covered with more props, odds, lines than ever before. Bet Online, it's where the game starts. Who cares, Doug? The Brooklyn Nets won a game. There's so much to get into here. Let's start where it ends. Epic back and forth moments in this one. And as we all drew it up, Royce O'Neal with the clutch tip in among the trees.
Oh man, what a game. What a game. This is why you tune in and watch the Nets play, right? Like, just when you think the Nets have you sort of on the ropes with how you're feeling about the squad, who's going to be playing, is the Simmons going to look okay? Are they going to pull it together? Depending on how you wanted to read the KD quotes, there was a bunch of different ways to take this, and they went out and played just an absolute complete game in a tough place to play in Portland against a team that's really, maybe going to exceed expectations this season, a good team in the Blazers, and they just took them to the wire. They got an offensive rebound when they never get offensive rebounds. Like, it just like all these even when little calls didn't seem like they were maybe going the Nets' way, things just end up going their way. We're going to get into everyone's performance here. There's almost like too many guys to name in terms of like who kind of showed up in this one, but this was about as exciting as you're going to see a game all season long. And in those ones, you just kind of hope that your team is the one that has the last tip in, that your team is the one that, gets that last hustle play, that your team is going to be the one to kind of take it home, because I think both teams could have thought they would have won this one. And it's just nice to have the Nets get the W.
Listen, I said it right there, and I mean, everything that Doug just mentioned is 100% correct. Welcome in to everybody on the YouTube live stream. Finally, a healthy one to come in and be a part of, though everyone has been incredibly supportive to this point. You said so many big performances from so many key players. We were really debating here as this one was closing out, and the Brooklyn Nets were looking like they were going to get the win. What is the lead? So much of it is around Ben Simmons, and I think that's the place to start here, because in these late sequences, and we can feather those inside of this discussion, but there was this moment after what was the best complete performance we've seen from Ben Simmons to date in a Brooklyn Nets uniform, this lump in your throat. As before the 2-minute mark, you have Portland doing the hack-a-ben and sending him to the line. And this was the culmination of the entire game. 3 out of 4. You want to send me to the line twice? I'll knock down 3 out of 4 to really put the pressure on Portland as this game winds down. You get into the misses from Kevin Durant, but it's the supporting cast that steps up here. And listen, you can't label Ben Simmons as a supporting cast member, but he had been relegated to that role, at least of late. He gives you everything, man. I think it's fair to kind of jump around in this game a little bit. He closes it out in a really strong fashion, does foul out, making some key defensive plays as well. What did you love about Ben Simmons in this game that showed up consistently through all 4 quarters?
Yeah, and just to reiterate what Adam said, like, it's hard to pick a place to start with these players. Like, it was a full team performance. Royce O'Neal triple-double, KD obviously 35, and it's also weird to sort of Yuta just like can't miss, an absolute flamethrower from beyond the arc. It's weird to start with a guy who fouled out and wasn't there for the closing sequences. So we totally get that.
Yep.
But if you feel like part of the hope on the Nets season hinges on whether or not Ben Simmons can perform like the Ben Simmons of old on a consistent basis, and if we believe that this is the path to sort of like top end victory for where the Nets stand, then this game was about as encouraging as you're going to see so far for Ben Simmons. Like this game, it was all there for him. Like he, on the offensive end, he was decisive. The read and react roles were great. He took it at Nurkic in space. Like he was able to just get aggressive on the offensive end. And then defensively, I mean, my goodness, like he was point of attack defense on two very difficult guards that are hard to handle in space. And he was up for the challenge and more. Like he gave Dame so many problems on the defensive end, really the entire time he was in there. And to have those two things happen, plus when I thought like a little bit of a white flag moment by the Blazers to start fouling him, like in a regular season game at home as like an admission, like we're having trouble with stopping these other parts of it. So we're going to go to this strategy, and for him to knock down 3 of the 4 free throws before fouling out. I mean, it really couldn't have worked out any better. So I know he's not out there for the final sequences. But he was as big a reason as why they won this game as anybody else, right? He was plus 13 in his 32 minutes, 6 over 6 from the field, 15, 12, and 7. And again, like, yes, he fouled out in this one. His defense was so good against the guards. And he just, if you want to believe that what the Nets were trading for with Harden was this version of Ben Simmons. Like, this was the version of Ben Simmons that they thought they were trading for when they traded for Harden, or traded Harden away.
And this is Ben Simmons on a 15-point night with 13 rebounds, 7 assists, a block in there as well. It doesn't do justice.
It's and so close on a couple steals. Sorry to cut you off.
No.
So close in open space, jumping lanes, like where he easily could have had like 3 steals in this game, and they was just like a fingertip away, right? And he just created so much havoc. Sometimes the defensive stats are going to be a little misleading. In terms of like when things do happen and don't happen, it can go both directions. But in this case, the lack of defensive stats is misleading for how good the defense was.
Yeah, and I think we did debate when he fouled out. Okay, what are we going to discuss here first? Because he's not a part of these closing sequences. But without Ben Simmons in this game, you're not at that point late. And this is where I think the stat line does not nearly do justice to what we saw there. So many little things over the start of this season, the moments early before he has the knee issues, and then he's on the bench, just a little play here, a little play there. No, this was consistency over the course of the entire game for him. That being said, again, this is going to be a jump around kind of episode, and it's going to be all right because there's plenty of people to compliment here. You're not going to love this, maybe, Doug, but I'm gonna go ahead and go over Royce O'Neal for this minute, who had that moment, and we've talked about it, and we'll talk about it more because that triple-double, by the way, is nothing to scoff at here. And I think there's even a beyond this game discussion around what he brings to the table. But in a game where Joe Harris came out, knocked down his first 4 3-pointers, got a 4-point play to open the game as well, and then faded. And he had his moments too. But Yuta Watanabe, man, he was as clutch as you could possibly ask for in this game. He's shown it in glimpses throughout this season, but oftentimes they come in sequences and moments when it didn't really matter, right? Because it was a losing game. Okay, it's a nice bucket and it keeps you close. This is where he hits the bucket that puts the Brooklyn Nets up. He hit the bucket that tied the game for them as well and had key sequences throughout. And I think in tandem with Ben Simmons, you're talking about guys that need to serve multiple roles in order for this team to have success. And this was a team total victory. And that's why I think talking about everyone is important here. Yuta Watanabe, chief among them.
Well, it's so funny, too, because on the heels of Kevin Durant essentially calling out that the rest of the team doesn't have enough talent.
God, he's next level. He's next level with motivation tactics.
Maybe that was the leadership thing. Like maybe that was the chess to everyone's checkers, because it's so funny that, 24 hours or so since a report comes out about Kevin Durant essentially calling out his teammates for saying they don't have enough talent. Like, I don't think he wasn't wrong, right? Like he wasn't wrong. He's just kind of, maybe it's not the thing you want to hear, but for him to be that, for those things to come out and then literally have like every guy step up, every guy step up and play what could be considered one of their best games of the season in the wake of that. Maybe it was a leadership thing. Yuta obviously is a huge part of it. Look, I want to actually, I don't want to get interrupted by this because we're going to go a little bit further here on Yuta Watanabe, who deserves a long mention here. We want to get to that in a second. Obviously, we're going to talk Royce O'Neal as well. Those closing sequences, a really good coaching performance by Jacques Vaughn here too. Like there's a lot
rotations, tons of good things here out of this game.
Totally. And I'm obviously going to get into Yuta Watanabe here in a second. First, got to tell you about our friends over at Masterclass. Look, these days, one of the great things about the internet is that if you're trying to get better at something, there are just, there can seemingly be unlimited avenues to do that. And then there's a place like Masterclass, which actually gives you the very best people in just about any walk or talent or skill that out there, and then delivers it to you right there for you to begin to get better at something. And when I say any skill, I mean Chris Voss with the art of negotiation. You got John Legend, you know these names, that teaches you songwriting. Esther Perel, relational intelligence. John Douglas, how to think like a profile. That's what you want to hear in these true crime days. The list goes on. Mariah Carey using the voice as an instrument. I mean, I could spend all day on the list of things that Masterclass has come up with to help you get better at a skill, to help you master all these different things. It's not necessary to sit down and consume a full class to start to finish. You can get insights from individual lessons, or you can, figure out what you want to learn in 10 minutes too. Masterclass breaks it up in ways that are really, really easy to digest. This is the new way to do things, folks. Don't just, sit down in a classroom anymore. Go to the people that have done it the very best in their walk of life and learn from them. That's what you're getting at Masterclass. I highly recommend you check out Masterclass this holiday. Give one annual membership and get one for free. Buy one, get one free. Go to masterclass.com/locked-on today. That's masterclass.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, so Doug and I also, we like to have a good rhythm to our podcast. Doug said, I'll follow your lead. He didn't realize I was going to get out over my skis and try to just start maybe just bursting out an entire podcast worth of content in the first 8 to 10 minutes. But we were talking there about Yuta Watanabe and his performance, and there's going to be other guys we're going to get to here as well. Listen, 5 of 7 from the field. All 5 are from beyond the arc. The corner is his friend. He likes it there. Also 5 of 6 getting to the line. 7 total rebounds, 2 assists in this game, 20 points. That's a high, obviously, in a Brooklyn Net uniform. Did it on the defensive end as well. To say that when the Nets signed him, and I was a little bit excited about what he could bring to this team, would be disingenuous to then say this is what I envisioned. But when you talk about wanting to get a sample size and in high leverage situations, this is what you're looking for. Like, you're looking for an opportunity to confirm, can Yuta Watanabe in the biggest moments actually step up and be a part of key sequencers for this team? He proved it tonight. And frankly, his rhythm and continuity with Ben Simmons, with Kevin Durant, with the other key starters on this team, that's what gives me real optimism that this is a repeatable process for him. Just a great performance from him.
They might start him. I don't know. I guess Kyrie's coming back. I mean, Edmund Sumner played 6 minutes in this game and was gone. And a lot of those minutes went to Ben Simmons and Yuta Watanabe. If you're looking at how the rotation, I guess Seth Curry too, but they played a really short rotation in here, mostly because Yuta and Simmons were so freaking good that you just couldn't take them off the court. Like he said, 20.7 rebounds, 2 assists, a nice flex in there going into the timeout. The least definition. Take it from a guy with no definition. That was one of the least.
We know guys with no definition.
Skill, no skill here. Like that was when Yuta gave that flex going into the timeout after the 3-pointer. The energy level from him is so great, and it's like this energy level that's also confidence, because there's plenty of moments to shrink here where other guys like Seth Curry can't hit a shot. Joe Harris comes out, hits 4 3-pointers and can't hit another one for the rest of the game. Yuta saved the game for them. It was like at times we run into sort of back-breaking moments. I think the Nets kind of get these on the defensive end where ball scrambles and then the other team pulls up for a 3. I feel like we've seen these scramble drills work out and not in the Nets' favor. Yuta just basically broke their back tonight by hitting just big 3 over big 3 wide open. They left him. They basically dared him in the corner and said, you're going to have to beat us. And he did. And if anyone in the team obviously has earned more minutes, this is not even analysis. Obviously he deserves to play way more, but it's just the best kind of problem to have, because if they found a real 3-and-D kind of guy here, and I think he's shown enough on the defensive end too with his length, they really found something here. Yeah. And no matter how high you were on him the collective you was on him in the offseason, like you said, it wasn't to this level. He's over 55% from 3. It'll come down, but he's showing you enough in all the rest of the game that regression is not going to matter so much. It was just such a great game by him.
And so on the back end of this here, we're going to talk about Kevin Durant and then just talk about the team, I think, and Jacques Vaughn as well, and the way that he approached this game. The other guy that I'm not glossing over
Yeah.
here was Royce O'Neal. And it's funny, too, because we even mentioned Joe Harrison just very briefly, comes out hot and then goes cold, but finds ways to contribute in this game significantly, especially on the defensive end. A couple of sequences you go, wow, he stayed in front of him.
Yeah.
And that means a lot inside of these rotations when you're fighting on a possession to possession basis. When it comes to Royce O'Neal, at one point I was shocked when you told me how many points he had because he could not find anything from the outside. And yet, cut two, this guy walks away with a triple double where he goes with 10 rebounds, 11 assists, and 11 points in this game. The from the field numbers don't even matter here. In the absence of a Kyrie Irving, and you mentioned Seth Curry not being able to find his shot, somebody else needs to be able to step up here. You don't get a lot from Claxton in this game. When Simmons goes off the court and he's having one of those performances, somebody needs to get this offense flowing. We did not see the stagnation. We did not see the ISO ball that would break down possession after possession for this. And that's where I think Royce O'Neal, man, I was ready to drag him early in this game. Hit one very clutch shot from the outside. But most importantly, I was not thinking that Royce O'Neal could be a facilitator on this team, and that may not be the role you want him in long term, but you needed it, and he did it. There's a laundry list of players that stepped up to fill a very much needed role in this game. I thought Royce was absolutely fantastic. And again, we're not doing deep level analysis here. It's more just gushing over the fact that we haven't seen this from this many players consistently together, and they did it tonight.
Yeah, he had 14 shots, which is the second most on the team. It's more a byproduct of the Nets' lack of options than it is about like Royce O'Neal, needing the step or having all this in his bag, which he doesn't. Like they're asking a lot from him right now because without Kyrie, they need anything that they can get. I mean, he has just enough sort of like on ball stuff to be able to hang. You don't want him to be the second most shots on your team over the course of a season, but in a scenario where they are now, where they just kind of like need anything from anybody, he had to be that guy. Yep. And yeah, it didn't look great at times. I think part of it is because he's being asked to do probably more than he's ever been asked to do in his career at really every facet, specifically on offense, right? Like he's never had to take this many shots in his whole career. They played with Donovan Mitchell for a long time, obviously with Durant and Kyrie. Like he knows what kind of player he is, and this is the high volume, high usage isn't it? So that's why sometimes I think it's going to look funky. But he's good enough in all the other. Like I wouldn't say he's not great in anything for sure, but he's good enough in every facet of the game that you can keep him on the court for long stretches. That even when the shot isn't falling, which it wasn't, you can't find as many reasons to get him off the court, right? Like he's still doing enough in all the other sort of avenues to make it worth it. And then obviously on the final play where Durant, it's so funny how this works, man, because we mentioned before about Durant, sort of calling out the other teammates, which we mentioned before. And he calls out Royce O'Neal by name because he mentions the other guys who were starting. And Royce O'Neal is in that group with Sumner and Claxton. And for KD to miss the free throw and then miss the final shot and have everyone else literally have his back. Yeah. Like Royce O'Neal had his back on that last thing. You miss the shot, he crashes the boards and gets the tip in. It's like the definition of, or not the definition of, it's like the complete antithesis of what you would have thought you were getting from KD in those comments. And they all stepped up, which makes me realize that like probably sometimes those comments are made a bigger thing than the players actually care. Right. I think, and like, because if there was a game where you thought that really mattered, everyone would have phoned it in. They went the opposite. Like everyone played their best game of the year.
Well, a little bit of listen, and I'm not going to attribute it to Kevin Durant going, as I said earlier, next level motivation here, but hey, you want to bring some FU energy to your superstar who you ultimately, love playing with and want to win with, but that little bit of, hey, you think I can't step up? Watch me step up, right? I mean, like all these guys, we talk about what a player can or can't do, what their roles are. They're all NBA, obviously, caliber players. They're all high-level athletes. They all have a sense of pride, a sense of conviction around what they're capable of doing. So that moment there, I mean, again, just the idea that Royce O'Neal was capable of going in and being among 2-3 other Portland players with significant size on him, that's effort. That's hustle. That's desire. Like that's, and it's also quality basketball to get yourself in the right position and be able to have that go down for you there. So in a game, to your point, where Kevin Durant maybe in those comments was sending a signal that like, hey, listen, I appreciate the game. I love the game. I'm doing my thing. And hey, the results kind of be damned in some senses. Results mattered in this one for everybody on the team, including Kevin Durant, by the way. And I'll just add in here because we'll focus on Kevin and then Jacque Vaughn and the coaching, I think, because there's very big contrast that I want to bring up. But even a guy like Joe Harris, a footnote, because we had a chuckle. 2 times in this game, Joe Harris said, hey, watch me drive, watch me take on Nurkic at the rim, and just got swallowed up where you predictively could see it coming. But as a reminder, he contributed 3 rebounds. That's nothing, but the 4 assists mattered. The positional basketball mattered. And the fact that he hit down shots early allows to still force a defense to respect you and keeps that spacing and that rhythm on the offensive end going. So in a second here, we'll talk KD. And I think the key role that Jacque Vaughn played in this as well.
All right, first going to tell you about our friends over at Bet Online, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. If you're over at Bet Online before this game started, Portland -3.5 and they got the live betting too. So at halftime, it was Brooklyn +4.5. Oh, baby. That is exactly where you want to be if you're a Nets fan and you feel like they're going to mount a comeback, which is the exact thing that they did. But BetOnline's got you covered for all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. They got the basketball, obviously, going into college as well. Football on the weekends, soccer, esports, it's all available for you on betonline.net. They got podcasts if you want to jump in on those. That's the fastest and easiest way to get in your betting fix. Head on over to betonline.net today. Use that mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts.
All right, so one of the things that I also want to bring up here is we'll talk about Kevin Durant. And by the way, it's kind of one of those games, as it always is for Kevin Durant. We're in 39 minutes, went 13 of 22, 8 of 10 at the line,
awesome.
8 rebounds, 3 assists, a block, and 35 points.
Yeah. He's awesome. He's incredible. You almost have to, you get to talk about the other guys because we spent most of the season talking about how great KD is that it becomes just so commonplace at this point that a 35-point performance, it's like, oh, that was cool. Let's talk about how good everyone else was too. It's like, it's not fair to him, but it's also just a recognition that he's so great.
Yeah, and I really thought, now it's interesting too, because only 3 assists in this game, and there's nothing to take away from what he accomplished here. But and again, we've already covered the fact that the moment was there for you, and your teammates were there to pick you up. But the effectiveness that he had, especially early in this game, getting to the baseline a lot of off-balance shots. By the way, man, if the Nets had come out on the losing end of this one, we usually don't gripe about referees or calls, etc.
Yeah.
But boy, were there a handful of ones where they were getting a handful of Kevin Durant. I mean, I said this the other day. He might be one of the high top level players in the league that does not get more of the calls that you almost as another fan would be frustrated by, right? Oh, of course, KD is going to get the calls. He doesn't get them. And we're always concerned about his ragdoll frame falling to the ground. He keeps springing back up and he keeps putting this team in positions certainly to be able to win these basketball games. And I want to get your take on KD. I'm sure it's that he was good, but also just as a reminder here, big part of that charge there in the third quarter where the Brooklyn Nets won the third quarter, 28-21. They were down at the half, handful of points, came out down by 4 at the break. And initially there was a stretch. They closed out that third quarter on a 14-0 run when they had their largest deficit down 12. So it really mattered the way that they came out in the second half with a sense of conviction and consistency. And that's what I thought brought you into the fourth quarter and said, hey, we can keep going toe-to-toe here with the consistent performance we're getting across the board.
Yeah, like they were just able to put a kind of a complete game here together. I think that was born out of the rotations. I think we're mostly pretty good. Obviously, KD ends up playing 39 minutes, which is always going to help. Like you always want to know that a big minute game for him is going to end in the W column because that's sometimes the hardest piece that stings, right? When he runs max minutes and you don't get the win, like it feels a lot better when he's out there celebrating as much as anybody when Royce hits the tip in, and he feels as bad as anybody when he misses the free throw. Like we know that he's a competitor like this. But the way that they pull out the rotations, the way that he was able to sort of work his way in with just about any combination that they've been able to throw out there. They were even paired Simmons and Claxton together again as like maybe a little mini experiment to see if that was going to work with KD, to try to get away. You think Simmons is playing better, but I hate to take it for granted about how good Durant is at this point, because like almost any other win with a guy with this stat line, he would have been the first 10 things we talked about, right? Because that's just how good he is. It's almost like it's almost his fault that he's so good that we just we would just do that for every single podcast, because this is the exact reason why all summer when it's like, Kevin Durant wants to trade, we're like, fire everyone else, keep Durant.
Right. Well, by the way, because there's no questions about Kevin Durant, we have questions about how Ben Simmons is going to come along, how these pieces are going to fit in. So when you need not question what that player is going to be for you on a night in, night out basis, you do look everywhere else. And typically we haven't gotten, this season especially, haven't gotten those other performances. The questions have been answered with not good enough, not going to be quite there.
Well, going into this game, if you look at BPM box score plus minus, they had 3 total positive players in the whole NBA or on the team. It was Durant, who was like top 10, and then it was Kyrie, who was like 50. This is among qualified guys, 50, and then Claxton was like 90th or something like that. Everyone else was in the negatives. So like, it's one of those comments where Katie makes a comment about the team, and he's like, he's not even wrong. The stats are just saying like these guys have been sort of below replacement level players. And like, just not to harp on the same idea again, but the thing with Durant is, and the great thing about him is that his greatness sort of does transcend these other things, that when he says something like these guys aren't up to like my caliber, I mean, I take it as, yeah, you're correct. And then you see him play in a game like this, but then what you see, what you know is going to happen is if you have Kevin Durant and then you get anything from anybody, you're going to win. Like, that's the sort of the nature of this team, is that, yes, it was a lot of role players in this game, but if you get sort of just any even positive performances from anybody else, Durant is so good that your team is going to win a lot of games. The problem is they just hadn't been getting those consistently. They happened to pile a bunch of them together tonight, and they were able to still eke out a win, but that's a good Portland team. So I do, it all starts with Durant, but they're in such a way right now where the role players, like I said, if they can just be positives, like, just not be negatives, just be like neutral or positive, the team's going to just be a very good team. It just hasn't really come to fruition a ton or enough over the course of the season.
Yeah, you know what you get from Durant. Fill in the space around him, right? That's the objective here for Brooklyn. On Jacque Vaughn, head coach, obviously, there's been a little bit of a joy swell around him. Wasn't so pretty after the Lakers game or after the Kings game in particular. However, there was a key moment here, and I mean, I mentioned it over on Twitter as well. Jacque Vaughn steps in and calls a timeout, which, like they said on the broadcast, almost, well, he's willing to be unconventional here, go against the grain. Sometimes you wait a little longer, a few more possessions. The Nets, every time that this game got a little bit frantic, a little bit the pace quickened, the Nets started to struggle. They got a little bit out of sorts defensively. You mentioned those tip balls, the secondary possessions, second scoring opportunities for Portland. He calls that timeout, and the first thing in my mind was, and I'm not even doing it to drag him, Steve Nash isn't calling it. He's flat. He's not calling that there. And on top,
you mean the one that was like the end of the shot clock timeout, right?
Yes. Yeah. Where it was. Yeah. They're in a possession. They're moving the ball around, but it's not the fluidity we've seen throughout the game. It's a little bit stagnated. Everyone's kind of waiting for someone to do the, take the step, make the next shot. And Vaughn steps in late in the shot clock and just says, hey, let's take a minute here, settle down and reset ourselves. On top of which, to tie it back into Kevin Durant, you remember, there's the play down on the offensive end. He clearly gets fouled. He's upset by it. That's one of the very specific ones where his entire forearm gets ripped out of the way. Ball goes out of bounds. Refs say nothing, go the other direction. Kevin Durant complains. And you said, as we've been able to watch some of these games together now, you said he's going to get, like, there's a tech coming here for Kevin Durant. And then the whistle blew and you were like, there it is. But it was Jacque Vaughn, because he immediately got in there, jumped on top of the refs, and drew attention to what we think has sometimes been a consistent problem around Kevin Durant at times. You need to have a coach for a team like this, and maybe specifically, going back to Durant's comments, he wants this. He wants a coach that coaches him hard, that demands most of him, and is also dialed into the game. And Jacque Vaughn, for whatever he is or is not as a head coach, is fully invested in every inch of that court every single night. I really just appreciated the way that he approached this game, and that's soup to nuts. The rotations were good. Getting away from Cam Thomas after his sample size was terrible. Getting away from Sumner when it wasn't going to be effective. Very proactive tonight for Jacque Vaughn.
Yeah, 30 seconds left in the game. The Royce O'Neal gets the ball. It's like 6 seconds left in the shot clock. They're trying to reset it to Durant. They're not going to have enough time to do it, and to have the wherewithal to call that timeout. Now, like, they didn't score on the ATO after that, but it doesn't matter. It's like the process is correct. The results are the results, right? But like I think you're correct. We never saw sort of like in-game tactician moves by Nash like that I can remember that many times. To call the timeout there, I thought was a pretty high level one. The only mistake I think he made, we said it at the time, was when they were up 3 and the Blazers were coming down, where Nurkic got the and one. I thought they should have fouled at that point, like, because they were up 3 and you foul up 3 because you just send them to the line. It's a small nitpick, but in general though, I agree with you. Like the moves that he's been making. He's been trying little things. He's had some quick hooks with players. Like he had Sumner was gone, right? Like Sumner was like, was like, hey, it's not working. You're not going to play the rest of the game, right? And like that is adhering to, or not adhering. Sometimes not adhering to like what you set out as your plan is as good as a plan, right? Because it's like, hey, this isn't working. We need something else. We got to get Yuta back in here. Mm-hmm. You're going to play now. Those moves. I just, we didn't really see that stuff. We didn't see the flexibility from Nash in the past, right? And I think we're starting to see that now. I thought a couple of them were little head scratchers, but by and large, I thought this was a really, really well coached game. And it's very clear the players are responding to him. He's way more active. Like he's just, it seems much more vocal. Durant called him out specifically in the interview with Haynes the other day, which I thought was interesting because we never really heard him say that before about anybody else. So what we've seen from Vaughn, I know there was, people in and around Nets world that sort of questioned the hire at the time. He's shown enough now just through these first few games to say like, he at least deserves to stick around. Right. Yeah, like this is, and he's gotten it, like he got hired, but there's been way more positives than negatives, I think, from Vaughn here, especially just how he's running rotations, moves he's making in game. Like it's all been really good.
And you said, we're talking about nitpicky things or just mentioning it. It's all great. And I'm only highlighting this because of, again, how the team ends up picking up a player and a superstar. Remember, Kevin Durant's the one that fouls Nurkic in that closing sequence there. Nurkic gets the ball underneath the basket. Yuta Watanabe starts to go towards him. And I'll give him the credit of knows the situation. You're up 3. They're going for 2 points. Let him have the bucket. Yep. And Kevin Durant actually commits that foul. So, I mean, again, it's actually a positive that in a game where Kevin Durant had a couple of really critical mistakes. Now, let's be clear, without his 35 points, you're not even sniffing winning this game. But it's important to see that the teammates were able to pick him up, because you can't, while he always will be there in those key moments, you can't always wait for him to show up in those key moments. And that's what I think a big takeaway from this game is. And by the way, bookending this road trip, you lose to the Lakers and you get absolutely trounced by the Kings. But guess what? Bookend wins against the Clippers and against a good Portland team. Honestly, coming into this road trip, if I didn't know what the outcomes were going to be on a game-to-game basis, 2-2 and these wins, I'd say, man, that was a really positive West Coast trip, and it really flips the script here in terms of night and day from the last game that we saw them play.
Yeah, no Kyrie on the West Coast swing to go 2-2. You'll take that all day. Yep. It's disappointing because you lost to the 2 worst team. The Kings have been fine, to lose to the Lakers, right? Like that's the one that really stings.
Yeah. And the way in which you lost to the Kings, that's what was bad about it.
Yeah, for sure. But to come away 2-2, Kyrie coming back here on Sunday, I think it's got to be a good flight home. The way that these guys played, obviously, like when you basically win on a buzzer beater, which is what O'Neal's effectively was. I mean, that's about as great a win as you can get. And just to cap it all off, like from what we said, and then the theme of the whole show. Full team win, like to the point where Adam and I took like a quick walk because we were walking the game and try to wake ourselves up with a little cool, fresh air because it's 1:40 Eastern when we're recording. And we're like, I don't know whose name we put at the top of this podcast. Like we don't have enough characters to put in everyone's name that probably deserves to been featured here. Like we need to
Brooklyn
go into
Nets full team win. Everyone contributes. Royce O'Neal, Yuta Watanabe, Kevin Durant, Ben Simmons all play key factors.
And we just run out of characters, and that's the way it is. Okay. appreciate everyone that jumped into live. West Coast timing here with the games, so we're not going to stick around too much. When we're back on the East Coast and it's, regular times for this stuff, 10 o'clock Eastern, not 1:45 Eastern, we will definitely stick around to do some more YouTube stuff. If you're listening on the podcast feed, you got to go jump over on YouTube. Tons of people in here just throwing out absolute Nets fire in the chat the entire time. Definitely saw it all happening, and we will be better about, not even better, but we just will do some extra bonus stuff on YouTube after games, coming next week and when they're back at home. So that's just going to be, that's part of the programming plan. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast. Also, just make sure you subscribe to Locked On Nets YouTube. Hit the alerts so you know when we're going live as well. Put the link in the show notes. Subscribe to Locked On Nets over on YouTube.
Talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. Mike Jordan.
Oh, one of the all-time great poets. We'll be back again next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.